Hello, podheads, and welcome back to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. This is your host for today, Kate Carter.
I'm Kylie Colwell.
And I'm Holly Spear.
Every year, I get a little excited to be recording episodes that are going to be released on holiday weeks or days. And because this episode is going to be dropping during the week of Christmas, you guessed it, I will be doing a holiday special episode. Okay, so this year, instead of deep diving into a single Christmas episode case, I've decided I was going to switch things up a little bit more. Rather than doing one long nightmare case, I'm going to be telling you the stories of five smaller ones. So, pretty much five mini stories that all occurred during the Christmas holidays. So, light up your tree, pour yourself something festive, and settle in, because today we will be unwrapping five true crime cases that prove even the most magical time of the year isn't always merry. So, case number one. So, up first, we're going to be talking about the Covina Massacre case. So, this is Christmas Eve, 2008, in Covina, California. We are going to be inside a quiet suburban home, pretty normal neighborhood, and the Pardo family had gathered together to celebrate the holidays. There were cookies baking in the oven, kids running all over the place, adults attempting to wrap presents last minute. Little did they know that this would be the last Christmas any of them would ever share together again. And that's because at some point the front doorbell rang. And it didn't catch anyone off guard, though, because it was Christmas Eve. And outside the door standing was Santa Claus. But this particular Santa Claus was not carrying a bag of toys. He was carrying a loaded 9mm handgun. To make it worse, extra magazines were sewn into his suit, and he had a homemade flamethrower wrapped up as a Christmas present that he was carrying.
This is already very theatrical.
Yes.
Wow.
So this Santa was Bruce Jeffrey Pardo. So Bruce was 45 years old. He was freshly divorced. He was furious, angry, humiliated, and drowning in personal debt. His marriage had just recently, within the past few months, imploded, and all of his finances were like going to hell, basically. His ex-wife, along with their entire family, had basically just moved on without him around. Most importantly, this was going to be the first Christmas that he wasn't going to be with the family in the family home. Earlier that night, Bruce had dressed himself up in a Santa suit, not like a joke costume, but a legitimate Santa suit. And he didn't do it for fun. He did it more in a tactical way because he had a plan for how Christmas Eve was going to go, according to him. So around 11 p.m., Bruce arrived at his ex-wife's house. Inside, his former family was gathered together to celebrate. And when the door opened, Bruce didn't speak. Instead, he just simply raised his gun and began to fire. The first bullet struck an 8-year-old girl directly in the face. She was the one that had opened the door. And the force was so strong, it threw her backwards and onto the ground. Immediately, blood sprayed the entry walls. Screaming erupted instantly, and there was panic, confusion, questioning who the Santa was, kind of all at once. I will tell you, give you a good note to start the story off, maybe a good note, but this little girl does go on to survive. Everyone else does not. So Bruce then stepped inside the house and began shooting. He moved from room to room, hallway to hallway, and fired at every single person he could see at close range. Some of his former family members tried to run, some tried to hide, but it didn't matter because he knew the house like the back of his hand. I mean, he lived in it. Bruce went on to shoot his ex-wife, her parents, and her relatives. Legitimately every single person. Along with the people, bullets tore through the house as well. Christmas presents were shot, ornaments on the tree were shattered, and pretty much the whole house was just covered in blood. That Christmas Eve night, 9 people were executed. And it didn't stop there. Bruce then escalated, and he pulled out his homemade flamethrower, which he had wrapped up as a Christmas present, and began spraying gasoline throughout the house. And then he lit it all on fire. The flames moved so fast because of the gasoline and the flamethrower that it consumed all of the furniture, the walls, the bodies. He pretty much turned that house into an instant oven. While this was going on, Bruce fled. So he was still dressed as Santa, of course, but the fire had already gotten on his costume a little bit when he started to flee. and it started melting to his skin, causing severe burns. But Bruce decided to bear through the pain, and he ended up driving 30 miles to his brother's home in the town of Symar, California. And once Bruce got inside, his brother and his brother's family weren't there. They were somewhere else. But Bruce decided to commit suicide. By the time the police arrived, Bryce Pardo was dead in his brother's house from a single gunshot wound to the head. Now, I don't really understand why he would drive the 30 miles and then shoot himself. Like, if that was the plan, maybe he was going to try to survive, but like the fire on his Santa suit burned him too much. I don't know. I don't really get that part.
Seems very like manic. Like he planned all that out. So you can't say he doesn't plan, but
Right.
very strange.
In the aftermath, investigators described the Covina house as one of the most horrific crime scenes they had encountered. Once the fire was put out, all that remained were bodies that had been burned so badly, the identification for all of them took days. 9 people were dead inside the house, but if you remember what I said from the beginning, one little girl survived. When that 8-year-old opened up the door, she was the first person that Bruce shot. The bullet struck her in the face and entered through her jaw, and the injury was beyond catastrophic, but fortunately not immediately fatal. She did collapse right away, and that's pretty much how she accidentally saved her life because Bruce thought she was dead. By the time the firefighters arrived to put the house fire out, they saw the little girl in the front entryway, like at the door, and were able to pull her out immediately. So the fire hadn't even gotten to her yet. So really, that's the only reason she survived. She went on to undergo multiple surgeries to repair her jaw and facial damage. Authorities never publicly released her name, and she's been protected from media exposure as well just because of her age. So I actually don't know if this was one of Bruce's children or if she was potentially a niece.
I mean, it's all fucked up, but
Yeah, regardless.
I'm glad she's protected though.
Regardless, ever since this massacre occurred, the image remains burned into her memory. I don't know if you tell her that it was her dad or Uncle Bruce that did all of this, that was the Santa Claus, or like, do you wait until she's older to tell her how horrific like this was and it was family related?
I don't know what's better in that situation.
I don't think any of it. I think it all sucks. And she probably has horrific mental stuff from this now. She probably hates Christmas.
Honestly, I feel like it would be scarier if it was like a stranger.
I think it would be scarier because they were dressed up in Santa Claus. I think it's sadder that it's a family member.
Yeah.
But you're right. It would be scarier if it was just like some random. So, anyways, Bruce went on to kill himself, and that's literally the end of the story. So, 10 people ended up dying on this Christmas Eve in 2008. And that is our first case of the day, the case of the Covina Massacre. Okay, so case number 2, we're going to head to Texas, Dallas to be specific. It is Christmas Day in 2011, a day meant for family, food, and traditions together. A day when most people are home together feeling safe because it's Christmas. But inside a small Dallas apartment, safety was already gone. This is the story known as the Dallas Christmas Killings. And the man responsible for it all was a man named Aziz Yazdapana. Aziz was in his early 30s, originally from Iran, but he was living in Dallas with his wife and 2 kids. On the surface, they looked like a normal family. They were married, had kids, owned an apartment, worked normal jobs. There was nothing really that made their neighbors think this Christmas would end the way that it did. But per usual, especially on this podcast, we know that what you see on the surface sometimes isn't reality at all. Friends and family members would later describe the family as having constant arguments, control issues, deep tension, and that this had been going on for years. At some point, divorce had even been discussed a few times. And for Daddy Aziz, the idea of losing his family was something he just couldn't accept. So on Christmas Day 2011, the tension finally exploded. At some point inside the apartment, Aziz attacked his wife. The violence was really sudden and extreme. He actually had stabbed her repeatedly, and every single one of the stab wounds were fatal. So she was pretty much dead from the get-go. But Aziz didn't stop there. He then turned on his 2 children. Aziz didn't care. He stabbed both of them to death in their own bedrooms while they were sleeping. What makes me really sad of this part too is that with kids in this kind of situation, there was no signs of like hesitation. There was no struggle on their end. They didn't try to fight or flee back because it was their dad. Investigators later said the crime scene showed a violent attack, not just a single moment of rage. This wasn't like an impulse decision. This was something that Aziz had been planning for a while. He had just been waiting for the right time. And he knew that they were all going to be by themselves at home. When the police did arrive, what they found was horrific: the bodies of a mother and her two kids brutally killed on Christmas Day. There was blood throughout the entire apartment, no signs of forced entry, as you can imagine, and no outside attacker. And that's because Aziz had already fled the scene, which triggered a massive manhunt. For police, they searched Dallas, warning the public immediately, like putting out a statement that an armed and dangerous man was on the run. But, of course, by the time that officers were able to locate him, Aziz had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. So once again, he never faced trial, just like our other story. He never had to answer for what he did. He took his own life, closing the story the same way that he did his family's, violently and without any warning. Investigators would later confirm that there was no evidence of any outside threat, no other acts of violence, no mystery suspects. This was simply just a domestic violence situation that had taken an extreme turn.
Might be like a hot take, but if you're going to offer, why not just kill yourself? Why take people with you? What's wrong with you?
It's the anger. Like in my head, what I think like with this is that he wasn't, the only reason he killed himself is because he doesn't want to go live in like life in prison kind of shit. He wouldn't have killed himself, you know? It's because he was gonna be caught for his actions. He hated his wife so much that he was like I'm going to kill her, but I'm gonna even make it worse, and I'm not gonna let our children. I can't imagine like killing the kids. That's my thing. Like, you can hate your partner as much as you want to and want to kill them, like, but like to also take out the kids is like you are just so pissed off at your partner. I think in these kind of situations, sometimes the kids are probably killed first so that the other partner knows, like it's like their last thing before they die kind of thing, you know?
I feel like it's usually they kill the partner first so they don't stop them from killing the kids.
That too. Yeah. Anyways, because Aziz decided that his family couldn't exist on his terms, he decided that they just simply couldn't exist. And that is the end of case number 2. So now for case number 3, we are once again in California, which, like, side note, did not mean for these to be California cases, but maybe there's something in the water there in Christmas. This time we are in Anaheim, California. Once again, like I've said before, Christmas is always the one day you can chill, sit, enjoy, expect nothing bad to happen. Like, it's the fun time of the year. But as we know and are talking about today, sometimes it can be anything but quiet. This is the case of Giselle Preston. Giselle was a 26-year-old mom of 3 living in Anaheim, California, and it's 2011. Giselle was taking college classes part-time, and she was working towards a future that would have saved lives. She wanted to become a domestic violence counselor. It's kind of an ironic situation, but because the person that went on to kill her wasn't just a stranger, it was her partner, William Wallace. Now, before I get into exactly what happened, I do want to like talk about what led up to it all, because this isn't just another case of like a tragedy happening out of nowhere. This definitely was like built up slowly. There were signs. The police were aware of it, threat by threat, apology by apology. Prosecutors would later say that as Giselle had suffered repeated abuse for years during her relationship with William. In fact, William had actually served jail time as well for beating Giselle at some point. And according to some reports from the trial, their relationship had been described as controlling and violent for almost the entire time. The prosecutors also alleged that there had been documented threats to the police of William to Giselle about how he wanted to kill her for years. So as for Giselle, she had 3 children. 2 daughters were from a previous relationship, a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old. And then, sadly, a 7-week-old baby boy she had just had with William. So she was like fresh postpartum, you know? So on Christmas Eve, Giselle and William went to a neighbor's holiday party. But when they returned home later on, neighbors described hearing an argument take place. So this is where the timeline gets a little off, because obviously we don't know exactly what time everything happened. But prosecutors would later say that Giselle had been fatally beaten in her home sometime between December 24th at night and early December 25th, 2011. After an autopsy report was done, it was confirmed that Giselle had suffered multiple repeated blows to her head, and they were actually so horrible that it made her skull sink in. So she like had half of a skull. That being said, the defense in court offered a completely different story, one that I think is just like outright crazy, I guess you would say. They said that Giselle was intoxicated and that she had died from head injuries after falling into a table, which, like, I don't really know how your head would be completely bashed in falling into a table.
That'd have to be a pretty hard fall.
That would be someone picking you up and like doing like a John Cena move onto, even then, I don't think that would happen. The thing is, when it comes to the court, no matter which narrative you look at, a woman was killed inside of her apartment while her little children slept. And unfortunately, it didn't stop there either. The next morning on Christmas Day, according to prosecutors, William dragged Giselle's lifeless body from their bedroom into the living room, propped her up on the couch, and placed sunglasses on her head. And as her children woke up and started to come into the living room for Christmas morning, this dick of a human, William, told the kids that mommy got drunk last night and ruined Christmas and to just ignore her. So William made them open their presents while their dead mother sat on the couch watching them.
What the fuck?
Yeah. And like, if you remember too, one of her kids is 8 years old. So she's got an 8-year-old, a 3-year-old, and then the 7-week-old. So, but like the 8-year-old definitely has to be standing there like something's not right. And like the 8-year-old probably can't really describe death yet, but like you can tell something's wrong. And years later, when this all did get played out in court, the oldest daughter, who was now a teenager, testified that she remembered her mom's body being really cold and that she looked sick, which is so sad. So around 9:30 on Christmas morning, William did actually end up calling 911, and he said that Giselle needed medical help. When the paramedics arrived, they found her slumped over on the couch, and she was immediately pronounced dead. I don't really understand the reasoning behind William even calling the police, because like Giselle was quite dead, had those horrible wounds to her head, but I don't know, maybe it gave him like, maybe he thought that was going to be an alibi, like trying to do the intoxication thing. Anyways, William was indicted by a grand jury in 2021 for murder. Unfortunately, this case dragged on for years. And so, it being 2021, it wasn't until April that a jury found William Wallace guilty of second-degree murder. 2 months later, he was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison, which I feel like you should just get life without the possibility at this point. But okay. Giselle Preston didn't get to become the counselor she wanted to be, but her story, as ugly as it is, tells the truth about domestic violence, what it can look like when it's hidden in plain sight. Could be a boyfriend, partner, husband, someone you live with, and in Giselle's case, a person who knew exactly how to hurt her and how to make her children carry that horror forever.
I'm sensing a theme here, and it's husbands and boyfriends.
Unfortunately, we are continuing the pattern of what you guys just talked about. Wasn't on purpose, just so happens. But for case number 4, I named this one The Night Before Christmas, Nightmare Edition. This is the story of Stephanie Kilhelfer, a 34-year-old wife and mother, and what led to her horrible death on Christmas Eve in 2014. This is another case marked by brutality, contradiction, and a haunting thought of how well do we really know the people closest to us. Okay, so Stephanie Kilhelfer was, by all accounts, a pretty good mother, great partner, and at the age of 34, she was living with her husband, Dustin Lee Klopp, and their 2 children in a place called Paradise Township, which is in Pennsylvania. Though specific details about her childhood, career, or like personal ambitions haven't really been reported by authorities, like there's not much on it, her friends and neighbors would describe her as a wonderful mother and that she had been part of a really stable, close-knit community. So very normal life. And as the holiday preparations were underway on December 24th, 2014, something underneath the surface would soon shatter that illusion of warmth and family tradition. Christmas Eve around 10 p.m., something, not sure what it was, in the Kilhelfer Klopp household escalated. Though the exact cause of the argument between Stephanie and her husband is unknown still to this day, investigators said it obviously spiraled into violence. So according to the Pennsylvania State Police reports, we do know the following details. At some point, Dustin punched Stephanie in the face. and he punched her so hard it caused her to collapse to the floor. Once Stephanie was on the floor, Dustin then pinned her down and cut her throat with a knife. This cut was deep, deliberate, and definitely caused massive blood loss. Unfortunately, the violence did not end there. While Stephanie bled out on the floor, grasping her neck and struggling to breathe, Dustin then struck Stephanie's head repeatedly with an axe. Each blow only got worse, and eventually her head wasn't really there, is what I'll say. Once Stephanie was dead, the actions that followed were just as worse as the murder itself. Rather than calling 911, Dustin moved Stephanie's body into a large trash bag and dragged her remains outside of their house into a shed located in their backyard. And then after moving her body, Dustin went back inside to the family house where their kids were still asleep, cleaned up the blood, and attempted to wipe away any evidence that a struggle had taken place. And in a surreal twist, because it is Christmas, their children woke up in the morning smiling, and family members came over to exchange gifts and participate in Christmas Day. Little did they know, Stephanie's lifeless and brutally killed body was in the backyard. I actually don't really understand how no one caught on to the fact that, I mean, everybody was like, Stephanie's not here, but I don't know what the excuse was that like Dustin gave everybody. On Christmas Day, Dustin then made a phone call to the Pennsylvania State Police, and he actually calmly reported that he had murdered his wife. He then hung up the phone call, drove himself to the police station in Lancaster, and that was about an hour after the call. At the state police station, Dustin then reiterated his confession, and once authorities went to the Kilhelfer Klopp house, they described that the scene they found was horrific because though Dustin tried to clean up everything, we obviously know that blood seeps through wood, carpet, walls. They also found the hidden body bag in the shed and pretty much the aftermath of a really bad domestic violence case. Dustin was immediately charged with 3 felonies, that of criminal homicide, abuse of a corpse, and evidence tampering. Additional reports later on indicated that prosecutors also added a sexual assault related charge, suggesting that Stephanie may have suffered further sexual trauma. But I will say I wasn't able to confirm this because medical and court records were super limited in this case. Like I barely found anything when it came to meds or courts. This pretty much all came just from regular reports. While Stephanie's 2 young kids, ages 2 and 5, were present in the home that night, authorities said that they did not witness the attack, nor did they hear anything that occurred, which, like, thank God. So Dustin remained in custody and was set to face a homicide prosecution in Lancaster County. However, love this, before the trial could fully unfold, in early March of 2015, while being held at a county prison, Dustin was found having attempted a suicide in his cell. He was still alive when he was found and transported to a local hospital, but due to a lack of oxygen in his brain, he was ultimately pronounced brain dead right away and later passed on. Obviously, his death was ruled a suicide. The murder of Stephanie Kilhelfner left a community traumatized and their family obviously very fractured beyond repair. What should have been a peaceful holiday quickly turned into a nightmare. And though Stephanie's kids did survive, what they lost was monumental and life-changing. I mean, both parents. Their mom's life was cut short in one of the most violent ways possible, and justice, in a legal sense, really never got the chance to fully play out. And so that is our 4th case.
We haven't even gotten to the last one, but I've already decided I'm never doing Christmas with a man.
No, they're not allowed to.
Not all men are killers on Christmas, but all killers on Christmas are men.
Except for our final case for today. So we're going to switch it up completely. This one is nuts. Case number 5. This is the Carnation murders with Michelle Anderson. So there's something uniquely horrifying about a family annihilation. And that's because a killer doesn't have to force their way inside. They don't need a disguise. They don't need to lie about stuff. And it's because they already belong there in the house. My final case of the night is about resentment that transpired into murder, about a woman who looked at her own bloodline and decided she wanted to get rid of it. And this is the story of Michelle Anderson and what she did to her family during Christmas in Carnation, Washington in 2007. Michelle Anderson. She pretty much had a grudge against her family her entire life. For years, she was very bitter. She believed that her parents truly favored her sister instead of her, and that money flowed to everyone else other than herself. She thought that she was underestimated, that she was overlooked and like constantly disrespected sometimes. And in this case, it's kind of all in your head. But at some point, Michelle decided she didn't want to reconcile with her family. She wanted revenge instead. Michelle was born in 1978, and she's 29 years old at the time of this story. She was born and raised in Carnation, Washington, to her parents, grew up in a pretty normal middle class family. However, by adulthood, her relationships with her family, especially her parents, had been deeply strained, all on Michelle's end. By her late 20s, she was completely financially unstable. She was unemployed. She lived at her parents' house, and she lived there with her boyfriend, Joseph McEnroy. Michelle reportedly felt constantly controlled by her parents, belittled, disrespected, resentful. I mean, the list goes on, but like you're living there for free, girl. So I don't know what's going on with you. Family members later described Michelle as a very angry human, which is, if your family's saying that, there's something to the story. They also said she was manipulative and that she was prone to blaming others for her failures. A major issue in Michelle's life was money. Michelle believed that she was entitled to financial support from her parents at 29 years old, and also an inheritance that she hadn't received yet, nor had it been talked about. So when her parents at some point refused to continue to support her and her boyfriend, Joseph, Michelle's resentment escalated into something much darker. Let's talk about the boyfriend, Joseph McEnroy. He was born in 1983. He was only 24 years old at the time of this case. He did have a troubled background. He also struggled with employment like Michelle, and he pretty much relied heavily on Michelle for direction and validation. Friends and investigators later described him as emotionally dependent. He was very socially awkward and easily influenced. In their actual relationship, Michelle was definitely the dominant one. She made all the decisions. She drove the narrative. She pretty much fed Joseph's anger. And when Michelle decided that her family needed to go, Joseph didn't argue or even blink an eye. On December 24th, 2007, Michelle and Joseph walked into their parents' home like a normal kids going home for the holidays situation. That day, there was no significant alarms, no raised voices, no one was arguing. So really no type of like warning sign. At some point inside the house, Michelle decided that it was time. And that's when the gun was pulled out and began firing. Wayne Anderson, Michelle's dad, was shot first, then Judy, her mom. There was no mercy, no hesitation. And as the blood began to sink into the carpet of the family room, Michelle wasn't scared. She wasn't shaking or crying, and she was just getting started. The next morning on Christmas Day, Michelle and Joseph drove to their sister Suzanne's house. Inside was Sister Suzanne, her husband Jeffrey, and their two children, Michael, 12 years old, and Olivia, 9 years old. They were just a normal family waking up for Christmas. There was presents under the tree, a special breakfast on the table, and all of it was about to end. The gunshots from Michelle and Joseph were all rapid and in close range. No one in the Anderson house had a chance to run or hide. Suzanne was killed first, Jeffrey followed, and then both kids. The house went from a fun Christmas morning to a silent, blood and gunpowder crime scene. All four of them did not survive. After killing all 6 members of her own family in under 24 hours, Michelle Anderson and her boyfriend Joseph went back to their home, aka the parents' house, where their dead bodies were still on the ground. And after relatives couldn't reach anyone via phone calls, police were sent to do a welfare check on both homes, and that's when they found the bodies. When Michelle was arrested, investigators were actually very shocked. Michelle wasn't like caring at all. She didn't give two shits. She had no visible remorse, no shock, no emotional breakdown. She pretty much tried to blame everything on Joseph, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. Michelle was eventually charged with 6 counts of aggravated first-degree murder, and after the jury heard the details, they reached their verdict very quickly. Michelle was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and Michelle's boyfriend, Joseph McEnroy, received the same sentence as well. And that is my final case for today. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Don't kill your family.
Great 5 stories, Kate. But I feel like we need to warn people before they listen to this before Christmas.
Well, you're listening to a true crime podcast on the week of Christmas. You're not expecting butterflies and sunshine.
And you know it's Kate's episode.
And if you heard my voice right away, you could have just logged off. Do you guys want to jump into overtime?
Let's do
kick
it.
You. Kylie, you had quite an eventful week.
Honestly, I don't know how much I can share. Statute of limitations.
Look, there's some things in this group that just happen all the time. And one of the things that Kylie just always, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen to her, is car issues.
Oh, I wasn't even talking about that.
That's what I was talking about.
Right. Oh, no, I was going to start at the beginning of the week, Sunday night.
That's true. Yeah, let's do that.
Morning after Halloween, I wake up. The security cameras in my backyard are either missing or they're disassembled. Nothing was picked up on said cameras, so obviously first thought, ghost. Last Sunday night, I'm in my little office. I'm playing Sims, and a flashlight shines through the window of my office. I sprinted.
Sketch. Also, did you say you were by yourself? You were home alone, so terrifying.
Halloween and that night, I was home alone.
Yeah.
I sprint. I'm texting everybody, guys, I'm about to be murdered. But then I was like, okay, maybe I'm being a little crazy. So I go peek out through the blinds again, and I see a man's hand on my fence. I sprint back to the other side of the house once again. I dial 911 on my phone. And I was like, okay, obviously I'm being crazy. It's got to be my neighbor, like, taking the trash out or something. I look out the window, and they're shining the flashlight on the neighbor's house, and there's the world's largest raccoon on their roof. And then I hear gunshots.
That would have thrown me for a loop.
And then at the same moment, a knock on the door. But I opened the door, which maybe don't do. It turned out okay. It was the neighbor. She's like, sorry for scaring you with the raccoon. Also, are you missing any security cameras? Because the raccoon is throwing several off of our roof.
This was my favorite part of the story. It's that it was the fucking raccoon. It was not like security cameras have gone missing. People are freaking out. Ghosts are being involved. 911's been called. Are you missing any security cameras? This giant raccoon is just taking them and throwing them.
Yeeting them off of the roof.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what. That's the only thing he had taken. That's the only thing he had up there on the roof. I don't know. He wanted his home to be secure, and I understand that. What happened after that, I don't think I could talk about legally, but let's just say I don't think this is going to happen again.
Okay, I have no comment because I'm mad about this story.
I should have spoken up for the raccoon and defended his life.
I would have been out there like, no, don't shoot, stop.
And then I kind of crashed my car, and that was my week.
You had a very eventful week. It's like every week one of us has a very eventful week.
What are you guys doing are you guys with your families for Christmas? Well, Kylie, you are.
Yeah, for the audio listeners, I'm currently recording from my mommy's bed.
So cute. Oh, here's a question I was going to ask you guys. So, what are some Christmas Day traditions that you guys like grew up with or still have? Because I want to start doing them with Millie. Like, I think she's at the age where like I want to because I want to do that as well. You know, like I want to do Santa Claus. We have the stockings. I'm actually going to write it down as you say anything.
Usually my family tries to get into a large heated argument and then say we're never going to do Christmas again. We do that usually every Christmas.
Okay. I'm sure.
Just kidding.
I'm sure I'll probably yell at some point. So
it is a Christmas tradition.
Yeah. Do you guys, so like when you wake up Christmas morning, what did you were you guys all wearing matching pajamas?
Oh, okay. We got a whole itinerary.
Because I do feel like your family, Kylie, would go ham.
Oh, we go all out. So
what time does the alcohol start?
It never stops, baby.
Oh, okay. Okay. Just making sure.
Christmas Eve after dinner, we get into our matching pajamas and we do games.
I'm going to write down as we pajamas.
Yes.
Games. Okay.
So we do different games every year. We're doing 10 this year. And it's boys versus girls because there's an even number of boys and girls.
See, that's nice. That's a good big family.
Mm-hmm. Christmas morning, we wake up, mimosas immediately. I think when we were kids, we would like all open presents at the same time. And it was just like mayhem. But now we go like one by one.
That's how we do it.
And it makes it last longer.
It's more fun. And you get to see what everybody else got. You get the appreciation for the gifts that were bought. Have you already eaten breakfast at this point?
No. Immediately after, Eggs Benedict every Christmas.
Oh, wow. Eggs Benedict. That's a hard one to do for a lot of people. I was wondering, I want to do like a special dish every Christmas, but I was like, what do you do that you wouldn't do the rest of the year? Eggs Benedict's a good one.
And then we immediately go back to sleep.
Oh, a little nap.
We take a long ass nap, we have dinner, and we start partying
Oh,
again.
we're skipping lunch. We're literally sleeping through lunch.
We'll have like charcuterie and like veggie tray out to
And
snack on.
then do you do like a Christmas dinner? Like it's a special dinner?
Yeah, I think we're doing steak this year.
Okay. Holly, what about you? Do you guys have like a Christmas routine?
Usually my family does like a Christmas dinner, the Christmas Eve, and presents with the like whole family, like, but we don't have a big family, so it's more just like the cousins, and then we'll do our individual households like Christmas Day, and then we'll usually do like a Christmas breakfast, but it's just like the traditional breakfast, like eggs, bacon,
Yeah.
pancakes, like the
Yeah.
normal breakfast. Luke's family does Christmas Eve with like their whole extended family, like all of them, and they play Dirty Santa.
Well, you guys, with that, thank you for tuning in to another holiday edition of Over My Dead Pod. For more information about our cases today, you can check us out on our website at overmydeadpod.com. Follow us on social media. We'd love to connect with you guys. And we hope that you guys have a wonderful holiday. And we will see you in 2026, right? Yeah, can't believe that. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.